All right, guys, welcome to episode number 8. Hope everyone is doing well. I'm going to start this episode as I do with each, taking a verse here out of the Bible. We're going to be looking at Romans 3:20. Therefore, no one will be declared righteous in God's sight by the works of the law. Rather, through the law, we became conscious of our sin. I'm going to kind of dive into what that means to me, what it could potentially mean to you, and how it could potentially relate to your life in trying to add value. Right? Like that's the goal of these podcasts: to add value, to enlighten, to enrich, to connect with people through perhaps a way that is not so common. Right? So when it comes to our relationship with God, it's not so much about our works, but more about understanding the grace that we've been given by God. And a lot of people kind of look to, well, I've done this, so I look favorable in the eyes of God. We are all given God's grace. That grace offers a strength that comes from acknowledging our dependence on God's grace. Like it always comes back to us giving to God rather than taking from God. A lot of people pray for things that they want rather than pray for being thankful for the grace that has been given to their life. Now, I'm not saying that you can't pray for the things that you want, but what most people forget to do first is pray for the things that they already have, and to be thankful for that, and to lean on God's wisdom, not just your own efforts, because His wisdom and grace will provide you with a greater way of life than you'll ever be able to provide for yourself or for others. Putting God first in your relationship, in your marriage, relationship with your children, the relationship with your family, the relationship you have with the people that are meaningful in your life, in your business, in your finances. Putting Christ above all of that allows that grace to be showered over the things which you have. And I think that's the most important thing that a lot of people kind of forget to do. They lean very much so on their own decisions and their own choices, and they push against or away, from the fact that they have what they have because of the grace of God. Now, this is something that we face more often in society than ever. Pride is a cardinal sin, and there are a lot of people that go out there and pride themselves in the things that they, the things they have, say, or do, and forget that because of the grace of God is why they have what they have. Because of the grace of God is why they're able to enjoy the things that they enjoy. That's the way I view it. I think that's the way it should be viewed. I think it's the way that enriches your life rather than applies poison to your life. I think that's the way that you can grow in your relationship with God. So putting Him up and leaning on His wisdom beyond your efforts is what will take you from wherever you are to wherever His will for your life is. I think that's really important because more often than not we fight to kind of become what we want to become rather than submit to becoming what He wants us to become. And that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. It was a tough pill for me to swallow for a long time, and I lean on God's grace more now in my life than I ever have before. And for that, I am extraordinarily thankful and extraordinarily blessed. All right, let's talk about I want to talk about the hardships of dialysis in this kind of segment. I guess some people have probably lived with or know somebody who has be on dialysis, whether it be temporary or long term. When I started dialysis, it was what they call hemodialysis. So traditional dialysis is done through taking your blood, filtering it, and then putting it back into your body through a machine. And it's a very uncomfortable, very hard process on the human body. I fundamentally view dialysis as slowing the dying process, not enriching the living process. The ultimate goal is to be transplanted with a good kidney, which some candidates are able to be and some are not. For some, dialysis is a life sentence. They will stay on dialysis until either they choose to stop or they die of whatever natural causes, would be. Now, as I would go to dialysis 3 nights a week, I would sit in a room with maybe, there had to be 30 to 50 chairs of people, and they did this 3 shifts a day, and they were 3 5-hour clips, and I didn't have what they call a fistula, which is what they put inside your arm. I had ports inside my neck, so these ports were directly into my carotid artery, and they would connect the machine, and it would sit there, and it would run, and you would get sick, get nauseous, and feel absolutely awful. After dialysis, I was barely able to stand. It literally took all the energy I had left in my body to get through these 3 sessions that were 5 hours a week, and I just, I would beg my wife, I'm like, I don't want to go. This was just, it was torture. I suffer from chronic pain. I have a bad back. I live with nerve pain, which is for those of you who have never lived with nerve pain, it feels like somebody's holding a blowtorch to the area where you are most affected. For me, it's lower back down through my lower extremities. So to sit for long periods of time for me is extraordinarily uncomfortable. And, to sit for 5 straight hours was absolute torture between the back pain, the nerve pain. This dialysis machine literally sucking all the life out of me as it's cleansing my blood. And I would do this 3 days a week until I finally told my nephrologist at the time, I'm like, listen, if there's something else called peritoneal dialysis, which is they insert a sac inside of your abdomen, and you're on the machine longer, but essentially this fluid goes into your body, absorbs all the toxins, and then it pulls it out, and then it pushes it in, and pulls it out, and it does it for 3 or 4 cycles. And essentially you do that while you're sleeping at night, which is very uncomfortable. So combine this thing pumping in and out of your stomach with this machine running next to your head, and the nerve pain, the back pain, all the other discomfort that comes along with it. Really, I can't necessarily say that it was a better quality of life, because doing that type of dialysis had to be done now every day. So the hemodialysis made me so sick that we tried the other option, the peritoneal dialysis. Well, the peritoneal dialysis is so uncomfortable and so taxing, because you're literally on this machine for somewhere between 9 to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's no breaks. And, that was disruptive to our life at home. We literally had to, at the time, we lived in a condo, which was a transitional living place. We literally had to remove furniture to fill our living room with set it up every night, clean it, tear it down every night, and there was a lot of garbage, and it was torturous. Like, and all along, I just kept praying not to wake up the next day, because I wanted to stop dialysis. I just couldn't do that to my wife. And had she not been in the picture, I probably would have never even stayed alive, truthfully. But beyond not even staying alive, like, I would have definitely never gone down this route of even getting kind of to where I was. And it was kind of a really hard place to be in, because when all you want is to give up, and then you have this person looking you in the face that loves you more than she loves herself, and I love my wife more than I love myself. I truly think that's why our marriage is as successful as it is. I think we are as selfless to one another as we could possibly be. This person staring in the face that is so in love with you and would literally die for you. I just couldn't quit. Like, I just couldn't stop. So I was praying that, like, God would just take my life. Like, just, God, take my life. It's fine. I'm ready to meet my Maker. Like, and every day I would wake up the next day, and then I started to build this kind of resentment towards God. And truthfully, I probably built some resentment towards my wife, which I probably never should have. And that was wrong with me, and I openly admit that was wrong with me. There was a lot of times that I would do things that I just didn't want to do, and I have to remind myself I'm doing this for my wife. Like, there's a bigger purpose than myself. And I guess it's really what caused me to drift towards the Bible ultimately after I was transplanted, was because I was looking for this understanding of why God didn't take my life. And I may have mentioned this in previous episodes. Like, my wife came home one day and she's like, "Oh, I see you're reading the Bible. That makes me very happy." And she goes, "What made you pick it up?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to figure out why God didn't take my life." And she's like, "You won't find that in there." She goes, "You'll find a lot of things that you need to find, but she's like, you won't find the answer to that." I was like, "Well, okay, Mike." So, we obviously had our disagreement on that, and I continued reading the Bible and listening to lectures and trying to understand the Bible and cross-referencing the Bible and reading verses every day and starting to think about them and what they mean to me. And I naturally gravitated kind of towards this newfound faith. And I have family that is going through some hard times, and I try to take those stories from the Bible and apply them to a situation, to try to not make light of the situation, but try to create understanding of the situation. And I think my wife and I have really vowed to put Christ before each other, before ourselves, before our marriage. And I think that's really where and why we're so strong, and why we've kind of persevered through all of this. And truthfully, like when I tell you that, like, physically I was gray, I mean, my eyes are very blue, they were gray, like everything inside of me was fading from this dialysis, as it was eating it was literally eating away any quality of life that I had. It was very hard to trade, it was very hard to concentrate, it was very hard to do a job. I'm very fortunate that I have good business partners and good relationships with the people I have business relationships with and my clients. But it was really a difficult they had basically zero consideration. Not necessarily understanding the whole thing, but like they had no problem just in the end kind of pushing me away, and it was kind of disheartening, and it's partially why I had a lot of ups and downs, a lot of struggles, a lot of trying to find a lot of reason and a lot of purpose for things, and it's really what drove me kind of back to becoming this trying to become, because I'm certainly not good at it, right? Trying to become this heartfelt Christian, which, I remind myself every day that I'm just a dirty, rotten sinner who needs to ask, forgiveness and repent. And still not fully understanding why I survived it. And, but understanding now the grace of God clearly had a bigger vision for my life, and maybe part of that vision is to talk about it. So that's kind of why I've started these longer form podcasts, talking about things that are meaningful to me, because they may relate to somebody else to some degree. Again, I'm sorry that the quality of these podcasts are certainly not high quality. There's no high production team here. Like, I'm just one guy in a house all by himself. I just think that kind of going down this path of telling my story, hopefully it will connect to people, and it will drive them to maybe see the light rather than see the darkness, because the darkness is what I was really focused on. I recall some nights coming out of the dialysis center, not being able to make it to the car, that I would hold on to the lamppost in the parking lot, and my wife would bring the car over to the lamppost so that I could basically just let go of the lamppost and fall in the car. I remember nights that I couldn't get out of the chair after dialysis. I remember occasions where I was unable to walk the next day. That I was physically ill, that I wouldn't eat or drink, I would get dehydrated, I'd have to then go to the hospital. When you're on dialysis, your immune system is extraordinarily compromised. Your ability to process food and liquids is extraordinarily compromised. There's a lot of things that come into play that become so compromised. Well, it seems simple that you think that, I can go to the bathroom and just urinate. Like, you become to some degree unable to do that, right? Because they're sucking the water out of you through this machine, and the pain that comes with that dehydration. I would remember getting leg cramps that I would wake up in the middle of the night screaming, holding onto the dresser, trying to get these cramps to let go. Just one horror story after another, and it was just torture, 24/7 torture, and it was very little that you could ever truly enjoy doing or going places, seeing things. It was almost impossible to take trips. Like, if we took a trip, my wife and I, like, it was just one night, 2 nights. If it was one night, like, I would go without dialysis, but if it was 2 nights, like, we have to bring the machine and all the stuff, and like, what kind of vacation is that when you're hooked up to a machine for 12 hours, and you're running plumbing and all this other stuff? It was really just super unenjoyable. And now afterwards, after the transplant, it was a hard recovery for me. I would say for maybe the first 3 months, I almost regretted it. I just wish I just almost wish I quit dialysis because it was really a difficult recovery. I really, truly struggled. It wasn't until about 6 months after where I was like, okay, now I'm starting to, starting to see maybe the light. I'm starting to feel better, starting to build more strength. I'm walking a couple miles every day. I'm now kind of indulging in the Bible. I'm very refocused on my businesses. I'm very refocused on my relationships. I'm very refocused on my trading. I'm very, very back to being the person I was several years before. Starting to feel that, right? And now, now the uphill climb starts where you're now able to do more things. So when I was going to dialysis those 3 nights a week until midnight, my wife was falling asleep in the car driving me home. It was awful. She would drop me off at 7 o'clock at night. She would go home. She would take a nap, rest, and then she'd pick me up around midnight, and then she would, she'd come back and get me. And I remember her falling asleep in the car, like as we're driving home. Now I'm too weak to drive, but she was driving us home. And across the street was a Harley Davidson dealer. Now I've had motorcycles my entire life, and I said to my wife, I'm like, listen, if I ever get a transplant, if I'm ever well enough, I'm going to buy myself a new Harley Davidson. So, about 6 months after the transplant, I said to her, I'm like, listen, I really want to buy the bike I've always wanted, which was a Street Glide. So I bought a brand new Street Glide. I worked on it myself. I made it the way I wanted it, and it was just kind of this project that I felt like for the first time I had accomplished something. Right? Like I had set out to physically do a job, and I physically did this job. I built the bike the way I wanted it, put all the accessories on that I wanted, and made it my own, and struggled kind of through the difficulty of doing that. It felt great to now have this accomplishment, right? And then it was, going on to the next project, and the next project, and the next project, and then starting really to build some degree of confidence that, hey, I can do, by the grace of God, I can come back to doing the things that I once did, and by, again, kind of going back to this verse, leaning on His wisdom, and not just my own efforts, but letting Him guide my path, really brought me to a better quality of life, right? And I can tell you right now, I'm still probably not 100%. I still have quite a bit of uphill grind to do to get back to being 100%. But I am a better husband to my wife today than I think I've ever been. I'm a better business partner than I think I've ever been. I think I'm a better trader than I've ever been. I think through God's grace and leaning on His wisdom, I think He's helped me become a better person than I've probably ever been. I think I'm more compassionate than I've ever been. I think I'm more loving than I've ever been. I think I'm more understanding than I've ever been. And I think I have a long way to go. And I think I'm nowhere near attaining the life that He has set forth for me. But I do hope that at least I'm gravitating in that direction. Because my ultimate goal, and it's the goal I wish for each of you, is to fulfill the will which God has set upon your life. And by doing that, I think that it doesn't equate to an easy life, but it equates to a meaningful life. And a meaningful life is often a difficult one, but it's a life worth living. It's a life of truth. It's a life of it's a life that's worth living. And I think that is probably the greatest gift that you could ever receive, is living a life worth living. So it's dialysis is really hard, and if you know somebody on it, and that was kind of the topic of today's podcast was this episode. Like, if you know somebody that is on dialysis, if you know somebody that's waiting for a kidney, if you know somebody who is struggling, with their health, really in any way, it's not that you owe them any form of sympathy. It's just let them know that, hey, listen, if you're losing hope, God has something better in store for you. Right? Now, a lot of people wonder, well, how come God allows suffering? And I'll go into that, right? But in another podcast, I'll get a little deeper into that. But understand something, that everything is at God's will. It's not at your will. It's not that you accomplished it. It's that the grace of God gave this gift to you. Okay? And whatever that journey may be, embrace it, no matter how hard it is. Right? I wanted to quit so many times. Every day I wanted to quit. For 3 years, I just wanted to quit and give up. But God graced me with my wife, and she's the reason I'm alive today. My donor, who desires to remain nameless, came into the hospital room the day they told me I was dying if I didn't start dialysis, and said, it doesn't matter what it takes, how hard or long the process is, I will get you a kidney. And my donor stuck to that the entire 3 years. Never swayed from that for even a second. So between my donor and my wife, and the support of my friends, my family, my business partners, my clients, everybody who took part in my life through that process, and today, I'm extraordinarily grateful for it. Because they didn't give up on me when I was willing to give up on myself. And because of them, I'm here to talk about it today. And my hope is that it touches somebody's life in some way, whether it enlightens it, enriches it, you send this to somebody who's sick or ill or battling something. My goal and hope is that it does ease whatever discomfort you are going through. And because we're all fighting something, right? That's part of life. Part of life is fighting something. But the fight is much easier with Christ on your side. And if I can instill one thing as I conclude today's podcast, that you pick up a Bible and you read it. It doesn't matter how religious you are or you are not. Look at it as if your parent left you a guide to life behind, that would you pick it up and read it every day? If your mother or father left you notes to living a fulfilled life, would you pick it up and read it every day? Because God left us notes to how to live a fulfilled life in the Bible. If you pick it up and read it every day, you will learn something that will enrich your life. And if you do that and you build on it every single day, just like I'm building on these verses, I hope that it enriches your life, because it enriches mine even just to talk about it with you. So I wish you a wonderful and blessed weekend. I thank you for those of you who are watching and following along. I appreciate it. If you'd like to engage, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you. If you'd like to shoot a video conversation, we can do that as well. And I look forward to seeing you guys hopefully in the next episode. God bless, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.